Oh, would you take a look at these? Western Kentucky will debut these helmets featuring their mascot, Big Red. You see the googly eyes right there. Very interesting. There are also a bunch of different versions of these helmets depending on position. What are we thinking?
You know what I think, really? I think this is brilliant because as we've seen with Deion, college football is different now. It's marketing. Now, here's the key. You got to take advantage of this opportunity. You're getting spread across Twitter, right? We're talking about Western Kentucky. Leading the show with Western Kentucky. They got to take advantage of it.
There's a linebacker one right there. Little reverse
Good
arc
stance
in the back. That is an athletic stance there. Don't see a lot of linebackers smiling like that, so maybe we got to adjust the game face just a little bit. Reminds me of Grimace. You remember Grimace, the purple McDonald's little character? Yeah, that's Grimace but red.
Grimace has recently came back a little bit, right? He's up he's been going viral on social media.
Yeah, they had like the Grimace
shake.
Yes, absolutely, which I still don't understand the impetus of that, but it's neither here nor there because we are on red corner, blue corner right here on Stadium, joined by my guy Jake Butt, the Michigan tight end who is an All-American and a Mackey Award winner.
This is my buddy Joshua Perry, who is a national champion at Ohio State and is kind of like my counselor with some of the things we'll get in today. It's an emotional day for some of us out there, for sure.
Yeah, no, he's going to need some counseling today, and I'm going to have to ask him the hard questions just like a counselor would.
Please.
We'd also like to welcome you into the show. We are based on interactivity, so we'd like for you to join the YouTube chat, also scan the QR code, and submit your response to the poll question for today. Who'll be the first to 6 wins? Nebraska, Minnesota, those are your 2 options. Now, I want to get to a team that is already bowl eligible, actually steamrolling through their whole schedule right now, and that is the University of Michigan, and their football program is under investigation for alleged sign stealing, a scheme that is happening under head coach Jim Harbaugh, but centered around a staffer named Connor Stallions. Reports say he bought tickets to future Michigan opponents' games over the last 3 seasons. A lot of other details coming out there. Used his personal credit card, bought the tickets under his own name, etc., etc. Jake Butt, as a Michigan alum, when you hear some of the details about this, where does your mind go?
It's really here, my gut, my heart a little bit, because regardless of how this plays out, I think, you know, this gives ammo to your enemies and your opponents to say, well, this is why you've been so successful. And I completely disagree with that. And I think this whole situation, it's unnecessary to have been here. Something that's gotten lost, though, that was initially reported that is an extremely important distinction, because videos are going around Twitter right now of the accused Connor Stallion holding up a laminated picture and talking to the staff. That does not prove anything. Sign stealing is not illegal. You can steal signs from film. You can steal signs from TV copies. So the videos going around prove nothing illegal. And I know this is a crazy thing to say in the world of social media. I would like to wait and see how this investigation plays out. I know some of the optics look poorly, Joshua. I get that. I totally get that. But I still think we have to see more details firmly be proved before I start to exercise judgment. And I'm going to say the line is very clear here. So I'm not justifying anything. Rules are important and they need to be followed. You can campaign against them another time. But I do want to see some more details come out before I start to exercise stronger judgment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. Like, I think it would be harsh to jump to judgment, particularly with the rest of the coaching staff and with Jim Harbaugh. I don't think that it's crazy to say that Connor Stallions was completely out of line. He bought the tickets. They have proof of that. They have proof that he used his credit card to buy these tickets. He was transferring them to people. All of these things are traceable. And I know some people out there, tinfoil hats on the social media were, oh, well, maybe he was just getting these tickets to his friends. Okay, so he was buying tickets for opposing schools for his friends, but only for games where Michigan is getting ready to play these teams, not teams that they've already played or national games, plus the ones that he bought on Saturday, which when he's buying sets of 2 tickets, they're on opposing sidelines right around the 45-yard line, and the one Saturday nobody used. Why didn't they use him? He was just buying the tickets for his friends. Like, I think it is very simple for us to say that Connor Stallions was a bad actor. What we don't know is how much Jim Harbaugh knew, how much anybody else on that staff knew. And the fact of the matter is that sign stealing at its core is not illegal. So what we did see on video on the sideline looked very coordinated. It looked like he was very confident in what he was seeing. But A lot of people have done this. Brent Venables was famous for doing this when he was at Clemson, defensive coordinator. He would wait until the last second to call in the defense. His guys would be scrambling to get set, but they always had an idea of what was coming. And that gets us to the next question is when we talk about stealing signs as a player, how big or how small of an advantage do you think it really gives?
One thing I hear going around here is like the Houston Astros get brought up. And what I think makes football such a great sport is the amount of variables that you have going on. It's 11 on offense, 11 on defense. There's infinite number of possibilities that can happen on a play, whereas baseball, it is a massive advantage to know if you're facing a fastball or a curveball or a slider or whatever. Football, I can have the perfect play called in football. And that defensive end can go blow it up right away. Execution matters. You can have wrinkles off a play. There's so many variables in football. This does matter. To know if you by chance know the play of your opponent, that absolutely does matter and play an advantage. But I think it's being blown out of proportion, and I think some people are saying that all of Michigan's success in recent years can be credited to the fact that somehow they believe and are being accused of knowing signals.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I think you have to execute. I would say the same thing for the baseball scenario. You know the fastball is coming, you still got to hit it, right? Like it gives you an advantage, but you still have to be able to execute it. This is what I would tell you is the more and more I've thought about this, the more and more I've gotten to it is a big advantage. First off, I start with the idea that this guy went to extreme lengths to be able to do what he did. It shows you how valuable he thought that information was. As a defensive player, even knowing if it's a run or a pass pre-snap gives me a big advantage. If I know it's a quick pass versus a 3 or 5 step drop, that gives me an advantage. If I know it's inside run versus outside run, that gives me an advantage. If I know it's max protection versus a 5-man protection, that gives me a big advantage. So I do think that there are advantages built in. I think the biggest part about it is executing. But I'll leave you with this as food for thought, is to me, you could have an argument that a 21-point win, a 3-touchdown victory, comes down to 6 plays. 3 that you scored on and 3 that you stopped the other team from scoring on. And I think that's what some people are trying to figure out is how many plays could have been affected in a game like this.
Look, whether there's 100 different ways to figure out whether it's a run or a pass. And that's been going on since the beginning of time. A good linebacker should look at the weight of the stance.
Sure.
There's ways to know that too. Also, stealing side, you have a limited amount of time. Like you're trying to get your play call in and communicate. Again, I'm not downplaying this, and I want to see more information come about, but I'm somewhere in between the two extremes on this, and I'm waiting to see. So I'm sure we're going to talk. Go ahead.
I want to be clear, too, because I'm playing devil's advocate on a lot of this. I think players have to make the plays. I think this can help. It can be helpful, but this is not the only factor.
Yeah.
And when you get beat, you got to look at yourself in the mirror as much as you look at the other team and what they may be doing too.
Flat out, you're completely right. And at the end of the day, it is helpful, but it's not everything. So
bingo.
You're exactly right. All right, let's get to the game of the week here in the Big Ten. Your alma mater, Ohio State, travels to Camp Randall to take on the West Division leading Wisconsin Badgers. It's a game, Joshua, that poses some big questions for your former coach, Luke Fickell's team. Let me just start here with you because I think Ohio State's going to be the heavy favorite. Where, if anywhere, does Wisconsin hold the edge?
Well, I think environment does make a difference. You're playing in a night game at Camp Randall. You got jump around. Like I played there in an afternoon game late in the year and finished up at night. And the environment there was pretty electric. So I don't want to downplay that. That certainly can build in an advantage. I always look at what teams can do against a run versus Ohio State, and Ohio State has not had a ton of success in running the football. If you can have some creative run schemes, I think that you can take some edge off of what they're able to do offensively. But ultimately, Ohio State is a superior football team. They have better personnel. I think both of these coaching staffs are really good, but certainly Ryan Day has a coaching staff that has an identity that's been growing for more than just a year. Luke Fickell largely is working with a newer coaching staff, maybe some coordinators, and his offensive coordinator, Phil Longo, certainly, that he hasn't worked with for a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to really find where the Badgers hold a true edge.
Hey, maybe that's the advantage, too, is I do think there's something to be said about being the underdog because you have nothing to lose.
Yep.
You know, Ohio State coming off an emotional week, playing a top 10 matchup against Penn State. Now you're going on the road. No one's picking Wisconsin to win. Maybe that's an advantage. One area I do know, Joshua, is if they want to win this game, they're going to have to figure out how to not stop, you won't do that, but slow down Marvin Harrison Jr. You being a defensive guy, I'd like to get your opinion on that. How do they, if at all, try to slow down Marv?
Yeah, and Ryan Day talked about the fact that he believes that Travion Henderson and Emeka Egbuka should be back this week. So it becomes much harder than the task that Penn State probably had to stop Marvin Harrison Jr. Things that I'm doing, first off, I think you stop him by affecting the quarterback. So
Yes.
I'm varying looks in the secondary, and I'm bringing pressure from different places. If Kyle McCord does not feel comfortable, he cannot accurately deliver the football to Marvin Harrison Jr. We saw some of that. The other thing, which Penn State didn't do enough of this, brackets. Brackets. I am bracketing this man. I am devoting at least 2 people to him. We're double teaming him. If he is on the line of scrimmage, I am pressing him. If he's not on the line of scrimmage, I'm trying to get some sort of reroute during the route. Disrupt timing, disrupt top ends, and ultimately have 2 people over the top of Marvin Harrison Jr.
There's a famous clip of Bill Belichick going up to Chad Ochocinco when he was with the Bengals, and he said, "Chad, you might as well sit this one out because we're going to do 1 double 85 today," meaning they're doubling 85 anywhere he goes.
Yes.
You started with it, though. The issue here is Ibuka's probably going to be back.
Yep.
And Ohio State's so damn talented across the board. At times this year, Ibuka's been McCord's #1 target.
I mean, Cade Stover at times.
He had 4 for 70 last week. I do agree the best antidote to stopping an explosive passing game is just to get to the quarterback. Oh, Wisconsin has been fine. They're right middle of the pack. I think they're about 6th in the conference in terms of team total sacks. So they'll need to beat that average. And again, this is another step, another potential for Ohio State's offensive line to step up. We will certainly have our eyes on this matchup. But coming up, guys, there's a couple of teams in the Big Ten that are just 2 wins away from that magic number 6. It gets you to a bowl game. Find out if they can climb the mountain before the end of the season. That's coming up in just a few. And remember to keep it locked in right here on Stadium. Shams Charania will join inside the association as they get you ready for the league's opening night. That's coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern. More Red Corner, Blue Corner after the break.
We're back on Red Corner, Blue Corner, right here on Stadium. Jake Butt. I'm Joshua Perry. And we got to talk about a couple of teams who still have a little bit of work to do when it comes to becoming bowl eligible. We'll start with Minnesota, who is 4-3 on the year. Just need to win 2 of the next 3 to get to 6. They host Michigan State, and they have Illinois at home, and then they hit the road to take on Purdue. I mean, how confident are we that they get 2 more wins?
These next 3 weeks are laid out pretty favorably if they want to get to the magic number 6, and if not even a little bit more. Look, Michigan State is a program that's frankly, they're facing a lot of challenges right now. Guys are transferring out. They're desperate for a win, so I'll give them credit there, but this is certainly a winnable game for Minnesota. And here's the thing about Illinois. They give games away as much as anybody, man. They'll just toss you a win as they did last week.
You're bitter.
I am bitter because you guys are. I'm on the chopping block if I don't get my picks right by next week. So, and let's see where Purdue is. I don't feel too good about that Ohio State game, but I think they could secure 6 before they travel to Columbus. Actually,
I think it's a dub against Michigan State, right? The Illinois thing becomes a question to me because they have played well at times, super inconsistent. And then for Purdue, their offense can move the football. I don't think their defense is that. I think they can get 2 of those 3 that are right there before they get to the Ohio States, the Wisconsins, and they can become bowl eligible.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
They should be able to, right? Yeah, I think it would be a bad thing if they didn't. But one team I think that finds himself in a nice spot here is Nebraska. And Matt Rule, already 4-3. I don't know if any Nebraska first-year head coach has reached 4 wins this soon, so pretty impressive. Looking at this schedule, so you got Purdue, Michigan State, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa. Joshua, can they get to 6?
Yes. Like I said before, Michigan State, I think they're the worst team in the conference right now. Given the dub to Nebraska here, Purdue is a very similar thing that we just talked about. I'm also not convinced that they couldn't pull off an upset versus Iowa or Maryland.
Yeah.
After watching Maryland lose to Illinois, just don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know. And we know that Iowa, I mean, if you could kick 4 field goals, you might be able to beat Iowa.
Yeah, the only problem with the Iowa game, I think you got to secure it here in the near term, because the only problem with the Iowa game is they win games by forcing you to turn the ball over. And Nebraska, they don't need anyone to force them to turn the ball over. They just give it away sometimes. So, yeah, that's the issue. They can do it, though. I mean, it's a good team. They can do it. Should do it.
Here's the wild part, though. You can make a case that if Nebraska turns the football over and Iowa doesn't score on that turnover, their game plan's not going to work because Nebraska, in terms of their rushing defense, is really good. And Iowa has only been good this year when they can run the football. So
chuck it on 3rd down. It'll be like a punt for you. And just don't chuck it Cooper DeJean's way. Just chuck it away from him. Be better than a punt.
That would be the wrong guy to throw it to, for sure. All right, so we have a franchise segment here called Hitting the Books, but where we eliminate someone from the season. But today we got a little twist to it. We're going to do it fill in the blank style. So I'll start with this one. Talking about Iowa. Yep. Brian Ferentz. It's time to hit the blank.
Aaron Rodgers' offseason program. And by that, I mean go into a dark cave and take some psychedelics to improve creativity. I think you can make some synapses in your brain, namely putting Cooper DeJean on offense. I think that could be a big thing. Hit up your boy Aaron Rodgers. That'll help you with quarterback development too, but it also help you get some psychedelics in there and open your mind to the vast possibilities of what offense could be.
All right, my fill in the blank is Brian Ferentz. It's time to hit the Indeed.com, the Glassdoor.com, the LinkedIn.com. Get that resume spruced up, buddy. And I don't know if your father will fire you, but you deserve to be fired. And I don't say that to be inflammatory or flagrant, but you have had one of the worst offenses in college football in back-to-back years. It's actually taken a step back. And I will give you the fact that you have some players hurt there. It was going to be a tough road regardless, but I'm not sure how good it would have been either. Iowa should move on from Brian Ferentz.
Yeah.
He should be getting his resume ready. I'm just not sure that even if his contract does expire, that they won't just give him a new one.
It's like when you're kind of dating a girl you had a crush on your whole life, and a couple months in, you realize this isn't what we thought it was. It's time to kind of move on, right? But it'd be better apart at this point.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. All right, how about Drew Aller?
Yeah.
Drew, it's time to hit the blank.
Off-season Manning camp.
Okay.
I think he got potential. I'm not ready to just throw the baby out with the bathwater from this past weekend. I think he got size, he got arm talent. I've seen some nice things, but boy, do I think there's some room for improvement. And I think what you have right now is a guy that does have five-star talent that looked a little bit uncomfortable and looked uncertain of himself as well this past weekend against the top-ranked Ohio State defense.
All right, so for me, I'm going to say it's time to hit the lab. And I'm very similar to you. Anybody who thought that Drew Aller was going to be the quarterback savior for Penn State in his first year as a starter probably set the bar too high. Right?
It's a fair point.
It's a very difficult thing to do. You could have all of the talent in the world, but I also think that you got to get knocked upside your head a couple of times as a starter to really be in a position to take the program up to the next level. That's what we're seeing out of Drew Aller right now. So I think next year he's going to be a much better quarterback, and he's already shown flashes of the top end of what he could be. I do like his arm. I do like some of his movement skill. He's not a runner, but he does move well, right? I think he has to take a step in leadership. All of that can be developed in the lab during the offseason. I think that's got to be his number one focal
Some of
point.
those weapons can step up too.
Yeah, they got
a definitive number one receiver.
But here's the fun part about that, though, is James Franklin should be able to leverage Drew Aller on the recruiting trail or through the transfer portal to some weapons out there. Come play with this quarterback. He wants to get you the football, and he's pretty damn good.
Sure.
That's what they need to do. All right, we're going to take one final break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. And you know what time it is. Coming up, we got the crossover, the conference clash between us and the guys from Rivals Down South. And yes, we're going to be talking playoffs. That's on the other side of the break.
right, welcome back. This is you guys' favorite segment. It's our favorite segment. It's Conference Clash. I'm Jake Butt. He's Joshua Perry. And as always, we're excited to be joined by our guys from the Rivals Down South, T-Bob Hebert and AJ McCarron. And guys, I want to get straight into it. It is speculation time. So the first batch of college football playoff rankings will be released 1 week from today. And we can speculate a little bit. Let's just assume the following teams remain unbeaten this weekend: Florida State, Washington, and Oklahoma. Let's just say they're still unbeaten. Of those three, in you guys' opinion, which resume will be overvalued by the committee?
Which resume will be overvalued? Probably Oklahoma's, in my opinion, because Oklahoma has the nice Texas win, and through the law of transitive sports properties, Texas's win in Alabama gives that Oklahoma win some extra juice. But when I look outside of it, I mean, I don't know that I'm particularly impressed with the Big 12 this season. Like, I like what Florida State has done against that ACC. They obviously had the LSU win as well. And I'm a firm believer in Washington, boys. Jalen Milroe is a championship coach. Michael Penix is a top 5 quarterback. They have the best weapons in the country. So I would say OU.
AJ, what you got?
Yeah, for me, I think it's Florida State. I look at their combined opponents' record. I mean, if you just take it what it is right now, it's 46-40. Their best win throughout the year is Duke. And, I mean, again, I don't know if y'all heard me, Duke.
Hold on now, though. Duke's a little frisky this year, bro. Mike Elton's good.
Riley Leonard went out of that game hurt over the weekend. And I think that was at a point where Duke might have had a lead in that football game. Like, let's be completely clear about what went on for Florida State there. And this is not Florida State slander, because I do think that's an explosive team. But we do have to litigate these things as they happen.
Yeah, for me, it's just, listen, Duke was winning the game. It seemed like they had control early, especially. So I just think Florida State's a little overhyped right now. And I like Washington and OU a lot more.
I think it's undeniable Washington's resume at this point. But in terms of speculating about the future, there's concerns with me that they're part of the Pac-12 just eating itself down the stretch. I mean, they got a tougher schedule than the other two. So I think they'll be highly favored. But I think that final stretch of the season makes things a little bit interesting, guys.
Well, here's the thing about Washington is that, look, no doubt, I think if you just look at the schedules, they have the hardest one. You should think that's the team that is going to lose. But when I look at Washington, I see a team that has directly fixed some of the flaws from last season, right? In the middle of the year last year, they dropped close games to UCLA and Arizona State. In the middle of the year this year, and then they finished strong, go 11-2. Middle season this year, they win close games against Arizona and Arizona State, in which they don't even score. Michael Penix doesn't throw a touchdown. So you take away their greatest strength, they still find a way to win. You're not going to keep Michael Penix and these three receivers down. Like I said, Jalen Milroe is a championship coach, the only one that has resumes on there. Give me Washington, boys. Go Huskies. All right, that music means that it's time for a little Rivals Down South. And, I mean, I would ask you then, Jake and Joshua, what do y'all think? Start with you, Jake. Out of those undefeated teams, which one is most likely to fall by season's end? Joshua?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about Washington, but I do understand how hard it is. This is why no one goes unbeaten in the NFL, man, because the level of competition is so good. And I get, Oklahoma probably has a rematch with a good Texas team in the championship. But I look at this and I say, man, Washington, you still have, Oregon State, USC, I believe Utah, even Washington State has done some nice things this year, and that's before the Pac-12 championship. That's a gauntlet for anybody, man, even though they'll be favored. And T-Bob, you've compared their offense to the 2019 LSU offense. I don't know if I'm quite there, but I don't think it's far off either. I don't think it's a hot take. I just think it is damn hard to run the rest of the season, run the table clean for the rest of the season.
All right, I'm gonna do what
Go
AJ,
ahead, Joshua.
So I'm gonna do what AJ was talking about earlier, but I take a look at Florida State as a team that could fall. We saw what happened against Boston College. It wasn't necessarily a pretty game for them in that one. Against Duke, again, felt like Duke controlled a lot of that game until Riley Leonard went out. I'm also looking around and reading the tea leaves in the rest of the conference. You got Miami going down to Georgia Tech, who is not a good football team. You got UNC getting beat by Virginia. Weird things are happening in that conference, and I think part of it is that at the top end, Florida State certainly has more talent and can get over the hump better than other teams. But when you start to look at team composite as well, like they do mirror more teams in their conference than they don't, just in terms of overall talent. We're not talking about what Michigan or Ohio State is in the Big Ten. They are very similarly talented to some of the other teams that could nip at them in the ACC. I think they're vulnerable.
How about this? So if you look right now, certainly in these first playoff rankings, Ohio State and Michigan should be, they should be at the top. But should a one loss, let's say whenever one of these teams drops, let's say at the end of the year, you have like a one-loss Alabama and a one-loss Michigan or a one-loss Ohio State, who should be ranked higher? Because when you look at strength of schedule right now, Ohio State's 27th, Michigan 25th, and then you got Alabama at 3rd in the country, Texas at 8th. Like, there's a case to be made that teams like Alabama and Texas should be ranked ahead of them whenever eventually one of these teams fall.
I think this is the unfortunate thing for Michigan fans, because Michigan, to me, is the #1 team in the country. They're rolling. But because of their schedule, it hasn't affected them. But they have built no insurance, whereas Ohio State has. They have 2 of the most impressive wins in college football on the road at Notre Dame, handling Penn State pretty easily throughout that game. So they've built themselves some insurance, and even beaten a good Maryland team. They're going to go to Camp Randall this weekend. I expect them to leave with the win. So they have a pretty good resume. If they have one loss, I still think there's a strong case to keep them in there. Michigan, because of your schedule at this point in the season, it's hard for me to make a case that you should stay in there.
I would agree with that. There's no buffer for Michigan. I think Ohio State has built themselves a nice little resume, would be good by the end of the year. But the Alabama thing does intrigue me a ton, and here's the reason why. I think that this committee likes to reward teams that they think have gotten better throughout the football season. So if you're Alabama and you lose early, and then you go through a little bit of a quarterback carousel, then all of a sudden you settle on Jalen Milroe, who's one of the best deep ball throwers in all of college football, who's playing with a defense that can get a ton of stops, can harass the quarterback. I think the committee's going to be like, well, they've improved so steadily throughout the year. They're not the same team that lost early on. They look more like an undefeated team right now, and I think they would get credit for that.
AJ, should Alabama get the benefit of the doubt for what they've done in the past as well as this season?
Well, 100%. Listen, if it comes down to a one-loss Michigan team, and this isn't me being a homer, I think this is just real. When you look at Alabama's, opponents' combined record, as of now, they're 53-36 compared to Michigan's 49-37. So listen, I don't like, everybody else has said, Michigan hasn't given themselves any buffer whatsoever. So, I mean, if you lose one of these games coming up, Purdue always seems to play somebody tough and get a win during the year that they're not supposed to. Penn State's going to be tough. Maryland's going to be tough. And then you got Ohio State. I mean, they have 3 weeks in a row to end the season. And if they slip up one time, and Bama wins out. Now, Bama still has to win the SEC, has to beat Georgia. But, I mean, you would definitely, as a committee, you would think you're going to take a one-loss Georgia to an Alabama team that has improved all year long and came along and won the SEC. And then you would definitely take the SEC champion in Alabama over a one-loss Michigan team.
Joshua, Jake, if you can see this fecal-eating grin that I currently have on my face, it's because we're going to let you go for now. But, Jake, don't worry. Sometime this week, we're going to dive into that Harbaugh record pre-Stallions and post-Stallions.
Please.
It is very interesting. Correlation does not equal causation, but it can look pretty damn bad.
Exactly.
And, that's kind of what we're seeing. All right, boys. Red corner, blue corner. Y'all the best. Y'all have fun. Looking forward to doing more of these playoff discussions as we start getting into the rankings next week. But right now, it's time to focus in on the SEC. And let's talk Alabama here with our guy, A.J. McCarron, because when you look at what Alabama has had recently, we were just talking about, Alabama and their playoff potential and how much of it centers around Jalen Milroe and that explosivity. Look at the run that Alabama had on quarterback 16-22. I mean, Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa right now are two of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL, probably top 5 guys, whereas Mac Jones and Bryce Young are starters. You got multiple Heisman winners in that list. So to go from these high heights to Jalen Milroe, I think actually makes Milroe feel a bit worse than what he's objectively playing like. I mean, he's the second highest rated passer in the SEC. What do you think, AJ? Is Milroe explosive enough? Is he skilled enough at that position with a bad offensive line to somehow get this tied team across the finish line in the SEC championship?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's improved, all year long. I think he's still all right. I think the O-line play is bad, yes, but I also believe Jalen holds on to the ball a little too long. All right, I think he tries to stay in the pocket and find guys rather than when the pocket's closing on you and you have a athletic ability like him and speed like him, like take off and go. Get what you can. Like stop trying to prove that you're this pocket passer guy that you want everybody to think you are. Play to your strengths. And so listen, he's playing well. There's one thing he does do really well, and that's throw the deep ball. He lets his guys, he puts a ton of air under it, lets his guys go and make plays for him. Where he doesn't, excel right now and that he needs to keep progressing as a pocket quarterback that he wants to be called, he has to help, work a ton on the intermediate to short game and being accurate with the ball. Where I'm talking about, you're throwing a hitch route, it's outside shoulder when the guy turns around and he's able to spin and turn around on the sideline and make a guy miss. Not inside where the pass is getting broken up or he's getting tackled for a 3-yard gain. And then ones that he keeps missing. And I hate to kind of get on this rant about him, but he's missed so many what we call crossing routes or deep overs all year long. He's got to start hitting those. But listen, I think he's doing a phenomenal job. And of course, like anytime you follow a list like that, it's always tough, and people are always going to try to hold you to that standard, especially at the University of Alabama and playing the quarterback position. But I think he's doing a fantastic job as of now.
Are these things that you can improve on, like everything you just mentioned, right? Trying to work that short to intermediate part of the field, maybe making better decisions when it comes to when to run and holding on to the ball when to try to stay in the pocket. Are these things that you can improve now over halfway into a college football season?
Well, yeah, a couple of those things. I think it comes down to, what type of time do him and Tommy Rees spend together and break down in the film room? Are they talking about, hey, instead of going through a full progression, a full left to right or right to left or read and triangle, let's get 1, 2. If you can find your back, find your back. If not, let's go. Take off and get what you can. Protect yourself. Get down. Don't take unnecessary hits. You don't have to be this, Superman. But those types of things, yes, you can progress as the year goes on, and you can continue to, mold your game around that. When it comes to an accuracy standpoint, no. Like he needs an off season with a QB coach that's helping him with his mechanics. I think he holds the ball a little funny. Every time I see him hold it, the ball, when it comes out, a lot of times it'll come nose down. So I think there's some things to work on in that sense, but that's going to take an off season and really spending one-on-one time with somebody.
That's funny you mentioned the nose down thing, because that is I talked to Matt Flynn, former NFL quarterback, LSU guy, on our local radio show a lot, and he used to bring that up with Jaden Daniels. It's gotten much better this year, but it's something that the common man never thinks about, but apparently it makes for like a very hard ball to catch. Nizzy B in the chat says, assuming Michigan and FSU run the table, 1 loss Pac-12 champ, 1 loss SEC champ, 1 loss Big 12 champ, who stays home? The Big 12 would stay home. You ain't keeping the SEC out, and the Pac-12 is objectively better than the Big 12. Like Oklahoma and Texas meeting up with one another is nice this year, but TCU's down. Kansas State's getting a little frisky here, but they're still down overall. I mean, when Oklahoma State's the 3rd best in your conference, it's just not your conference's year. All right, when we get back, We're going to continue to talk Crimson Tide as our guy, the Crimson Emperor, Nick Saban, has a jovial pep in his step that I don't know that I love. And LSU and Bama, a tale as old as time, once again on the horizon. More Rivals next. Welcome back to Rivals Down South with T-Bob and A.J. McCarron. He is a 3-time national champion, current Cincinnati Bengal, and a man who, well, knows Nick Saban as well as any that you could possibly talk to on one of these shows. And so I'm looking for your insight here, AJ, because after this Tennessee game, and I'd already heard, right, I too have some sources inside the Alabama program, and I heard Saban's been walking around the past few weeks like a 39-year-old. I mean, just running around, energy level super high. He seems galvanized by the challenge. And it kind of makes sense outside looking in, right? Like, and I love this quote. He says, "The challenges are great. I enjoy coaching this team. That's not to say they're not taking years off my life, but I'm okay with that." But like leading from ahead or motivating from ahead sometimes is really hard. Like if you're beating the hell out of everybody 45-3, it's tough to keep that edge. But when you're in dogfights and you're losing at halftime and your team finds ways to come back and win close games, not only is it easier to motivate, but just frankly, like that's more fun. Like as a coach, as a competitor, it's just more fun to win those sort of battles and those fist fights. And it just, I mean, Nick Saban smiling with the cigar after this last game. It seems like he's kind of in his happy place, even though this is a more flawed Alabama team that he's had in like 15 years.
No, 100%. Listen, I think over the years, like the Coach Saban that I had compared to what the guys there now have, it is night and day. Okay, I mean, you couldn't get polar opposites if you tried. I mean,
in what way?
Just his attitude. Like when I watch the game and I see the team, you know, with how many self-inflicted wounds that they cause themselves, like with the false start penalties, the holding and everything. Like old school coach Saban would have been losing his absolute mind on the sideline. He would have destroyed every headset he had. Everybody's getting their asses chewed. I mean, it's not pretty. It's not pretty when you go back on Sunday after the game to watch the good, bad, and ugly film. Like he has mellowed out so much, and you know you got to take the good with the bad on that, because I see Alabama fans all the time talking about, you know, Coach has lost his edge. Coach, where's the mean Coach Saban again? Like, all right, but with the day and age that it is now from a recruiting standpoint, like parents want to see a coach be relatable to their kids. Like for a while that was fine, but now with the change of the times and, you know, just how the world is, like you got to be softer. You got to, you know, be nicer to people when it comes to that. So he had to change his ways.
I mean, he's a grandfather, right? Like he's literally said it multiple times. Like I think it's and I haven't gone through this yet. You know, we both have 3 kids, so eventually we will. But like, it's probably impossible to be 70 years old, be that wealthy, be a grandpa, and at least not be like a little happy and chill and content with the life that you've created. But I have seen recently, though, AJ, it seems like Miss Terry. Well, he said this. Miss Terry gave him the go-ahead to start being a little more angry again, and you've seen flashes of it here and there. It's not the old LSU, Nick Saban, Will Muschamp montages, which are hilarious to watch nowadays, where they're like 2 little hobbits just losing their minds. But he's getting a little bit of it back. Either way, he seems revitalized. Alabama's winning close games 3 times in a row now. They get down at half, only to find ways to come back and win. But it's that time of year. Speaking of LSU, both Alabama and LSU have made tradition of taking a bye week before they square up with one another. Can Alabama, is it sustainable to get down to an offense like LSU's, like to get in that hole? Could they climb out against Jaden Daniels and all the firepower they bring to bear?
I think this is one of the best matchups there is, right? Like LSU, what are they great at offensively? Like throwing the ball all over the place, all over the field, down the field, however they want to do it. That's what their strength is. What's Alabama's weakness right now? 1, it's starting slow, and then 2, it's defense early in games for whatever reason, and giving up big plays in the passing game. I mean, it's been that way for, you know, a while now. Is with all the talent they have in the secondary that gets drafted high every year in the NFL draft, for whatever reason, they still give up a ton of big plays, explosive plays in the passing game as a defense. And is that something you can do in this game with the amount of points that LSU is able to put up? I don't know, because you've seen Alabama's offense go through these struggles throughout the game to where they either start great and then they don't finish great, or they start super slow and then they finish better, but they go through these lulls in the second half to where they can't get anything going. It's hard for them to get first downs. They're just steady punting. Like, I think this is one of the most intriguing matchups all year long for Alabama. And I think it's going to be a super tough game.
Well, and one of the reasons why it's so intriguing, to expound on what you were just talking about, it is a true strength on strength, weakness on weakness battle. And so to me, the question becomes like, okay, is the disparity in strengths greater than the disparity in weaknesses, and vice versa? So yes, the Alabama defense is awesome, right? But it's not otherworldly like the LSU offense. Flip it. The Alabama offense is below average, but it's not otherworldly bad like the LSU defense has been this year, right? And like, if there's one thing Alabama does do well, it's explosivity. LSU's probably going to have 2 freshman corners play in this game. I mean, it's a disaster right now in the defensive backfield. So we're going to break it down a lot over the next 2 weeks. But you're right, just in terms of how these teams match up, who knows how it could play out. I think it opened up at 5.5 I wanted to say. And then obviously going into T-Town is always going to be tough and a big advantage for the Tide. All right, coming up next here on Rivals Down South, keep it locked, youtube.com/Watch Stadium. We got much more coming up. The Gators Death March. Welcome back to Rivals Down South here on Stadium, youtube.com/Watch Stadium. So our guy Dan Vega's our producer. He does an excellent job, and I love how he titled this next topic, The Gators Death March. As, look, right now, Florida's kind of a feel-good story, I suppose. They've won some games. They got a pretty good record. Graham Mertz has kind of misleadingly good numbers, I would say, but this is where it gets real for Georgia. They got the cocktail party this weekend against, for Florida. They got the cocktail party against Georgia. Then they got Arkansas, whatever. But then at LSU, at Mizzou, and at home versus Florida State. I mean, my God, AJ, it feels like Billy Napier's Gators are about to crumble.
Oh, 100%. Listen, when I think about Florida, and I like Coach Napier a lot. Was with him at Alabama, but it's like they missed their window of opportunity to strike hot when he first got there. And you had Florida State was down from a recruiting standpoint, wasn't doing great. You had Miami was down, right? So, like, you were the best school in Florida at the time. Like, you had all the hype. You had all the hype that he had coming over from Louisiana Lafayette. Like, the recruiting, from the recruiting standpoint, you had everything you needed right there. And it just hasn't worked out. You had Anthony Richardson, goes number 1 overall. You really couldn't do anything with him. I think they lose, 4 of their last 5 games coming up, and I think it's going to be a rough future for him. I don't see it getting any better.
The only thing I'll say is a lot of times, it's a classic with great challenge comes opportunity. If Napier can steal one of these games even, it would go a long way towards kind of easing his path into the offseason. But you look look, that's a lot of ranked SEC teams there. And it kind of begs the question, AJ, what do you think, man? For all the talk of who's the best conference, is the SEC back on top?
Yeah, I think so. Listen, the Big Ten doesn't have enough teams that have played, top tier opponents, right?
Yep.
Ohio State and Penn State, they've played a couple tough games. Other than that, Michigan's schedule is extremely weak. The Pac-12, USC is kind of falling off big time. Oregon's still hanging around. So, and then the Big 12 itself is falling off, other than OU and Texas. So I think as a whole conference, you still got the SEC, and they're back on top now.
I mean, look, they got the most NFL guys. They got the most ranked teams, or at least they will by season's end. And I bet you when we look at bowl games and interconference games by the year, they're going to have the most wins. It happens every single year, and we try to convince ourselves that it's going to change, but it ain't. Huge thank you to AJ McCarron joining us live from Cincy. This is Rivals Down South. We'll be back with more on Stadium tomorrow. Love y'all. See you tomorrow.